In today's video, I'm going to be revealing the exact Google Ads strategy that we're using in 2024 across all of our clients that is the absolute most profitable, most effective, and actually leans into the algorithm more than any strategy we've ever used before. So what we're going to go through is campaign setup, ad group setup, targeting, settings, everything A to Z that you need to be completely covered to set up the most efficient ads possible. What we need to do is actually learn the system, roll out our ads, be as efficient as possible, and it's going to be so much easier. And first things first, you have to go set up your Google Ads account. This is going to be really simple. You're literally just going to type in Google Ads on Google. And then once you're here, you're going to click Start Now. And there's going to be a very, very basic setup for you to follow to actually go through and start your account. Once you start your account, it's going to be on what they call easy mode. You need to convert it to expert mode. Look in the top right corner. There'll be a little button that says expert mode. Switch it over there and pause whatever campaign they made you set up already. So now from this point forward, we're going to be actually using an account that we're actively managing that's spending roughly $500 to $1,000 a day in ad spend. But I'm going to break down every single thing, not only in this account, but how we would start if we were completely fresh. What you want to do first, change your spacing to extra small. You need to see as much as possible on the screen at all times. Next thing is, as you can see here, we have our campaigns built on the left side. We have our toolbar on the left side as well, and then followed by the normal dashboard. What I would highly recommend for your setup to look like this, just click change view up in this top right corner, and it will instantly look like so. You got your dashboard set up, your account is set up, your payment information is set up. The very first thing you're actually going to need to do is set up your tracking properly. So we're going to operate under the assumption that you're running a Shopify store. If you're not running a Shopify store, this is all still going to apply to you. You just might need to look for slightly different URLs or different marketplaces to find the apps that I'm going to provide. The app that you want to download first is very simple, the Google and YouTube app. All you need to do is actually click the download button that will be right here. And once you download this app, you can open it up and it will be a sales channel in your Shopify dashboard. You're going to notice there's some very, very simple setup instructions. You're going to need to enter a few numbers in. This is automatically going to set up all of your tracking, all of your conversion events is going to be done in the click of 3 to 4 buttons. And the beauty of it is this also sets up your entire Google Merchant Center and your entire feed of all of your products. Once you set up your first few things on the overview dashboard, head over to your settings. It should be the third toggle in the Google and YouTube app, and just make sure your Google Merchant Center account ID and your Google Analytics account ID actually match the ones that you have in your respective platforms. Everything else here doesn't really matter. Conversion tracking matters a ton. We need to make sure that we see a green check mark here. This should be on. And as it says here, this is recommended for Google Ads and required for YouTube and Google Analytics, which is going to be absolutely key to everything that we're going to go through in this tutorial. Last piece here, you want to select your product title preference as SEO product title and your product description preference as SEO product description. It says recommended, so keep them as so. We have properly set up our conversion tracking. You can test that tracking, but for the sake of time, we are not going to test tracking right now. And instead, we're going to jump right into the campaign setup that we recommend. And we're going to actually walk through the different campaign types first so you can fully understand everything. When we are actually creating our first campaign, we are going to select new campaign. And then because this tutorial is very specific to sales and actually e-commerce sales specifically, we are going to click the sales objective. Right down here, you should see your primary conversion event is your purchase event. What you'll want to make sure is in your settings, you actually have the proper single purchase conversion event selected and you're not double counting or even triple counting some of your purchase events. If you set this up using the Google and YouTube app in your Shopify store and you have one single event for purchases, this is going to be totally taken care of and all you need to select is your purchases event as your account goal. We're going to go ahead and click continue. There's 6 different campaign types. First things first, the most common, the tried and true of Google Ads, search. Google search is literally showing up in front of high intent customers with the Google search. So the easy way to think about this is the same way you search something, whether you're on your phone, whether you're on your computer, you go to google.com and you search for cameras. These are the ads that are actually showing up. The next campaign is Performance Max. This is an all-in-one encompassing campaign. Literally, you have search, display, shopping, video, and demand gen all in one single campaign. The next campaign type we have is display. You could think of display as very simple side banner ads. So if you go to a site like New York Times and you look at the side of the website, there's going to be a bunch of little pop-up ads that come on here and there. What I'd recommend if you want to see the best display ads, go to Nike.com, search around a bunch of different pairs of shoes or apparel, and then start browsing the internet. Go to Yahoo, go to a variety of different websites. In this case, this is a website I was just on, Pori Jewelers, and as you can see right here, this is a display ad that's showing up. So if I were to click on this, I get directed to their site, and I can see just by this little piece here, this ad choices, this is going to indicate that this is actually a Google-driven display ad. Shopping is the most standard for e-commerce. In shopping, you're actually going to populate pieces within the shopping feed within Google. This banner right here is the single most important real estate that you are going to see within all of Google Ads. It is the most direct to buy because we have images showing, we have text showing, we have price showing, we have reviews showing all in one single spot. It's basically everything the customer needs to make a quick decision on what to buy and where to buy it. The very typical customer behavior is type in what they want, look here, say, okay, they're all $35. This one's 45. I don't want 45. I like this color. Let me click this. And then all of a sudden we are on the website that sells it. It'll load up super quick and everything matches. $35 as it promised. The color as it promised matches exactly what we see on the Google side. And that is the power of shopping. And this placement is also available in Performance Max. Video ads are going to show up before and during a YouTube video. So anytime you watch a YouTube video, you'll probably see a 5-second pre-roll or a 30-second full ad. In either case, that is going to be a YouTube ad. If you're just starting out, if you're doing under $10 million in revenue, I highly recommend to avoid running YouTube ads. They are very, very high level and they often do not convert nearly as well as a shopping, search, or Performance Max campaign. And finally, the last campaign type, demand gen. So you may have heard this about a few years ago. This was called Discovery. And just 3 months ago, they renamed Discovery Demand Gen. The reason for this is honestly because it generates demand. You could think of demand gen as the most similar asset that Google has to a Facebook or Instagram feed. Basically, demand gen is showing up on YouTube, Gmail, and Discover feeds. Honestly, it's not something I really want to push because it's going to be a small part of our Performance Max spend, but in some cases it is worth it if you are strictly advertising on Google and don't have a major presence on Facebook or Instagram. So what I'm going to show you now is actually an exact setup that we're using for a client we're actively managing, which really just contains 2 campaign types, and it's a very simple setup that you can copy and paste right into your ad accounts that will probably drive a better return than any complicated setup and any oversimplified setup. We have 2 search campaigns and 2 PMax campaigns. On these 2 search campaigns, these are actually brand primary search campaigns. These campaigns are focused on brand terms. So if your brand term is Nike, then in the search and ad keywords here, we are literally saying Nike. We want to show up when someone searches for our brand name. If you're just starting out and you don't have any brand searches already, don't worry about this campaign. You can completely ignore it. However, if you are in that $1 million range in revenue or greater, then I highly recommend you have a brand search campaign and it just be exact match. So the reason we have 2 of these is because one is a core brand campaign. So you would have Nike, Nike shoes, Nike apparel. Those would be your core. What goes beyond that is when you have different lines of branded terms. So a very common Nike term would be Jordans. Jordans, when someone searches, we want to show up in an ad, but it isn't as direct as saying Nike. We need to direct that person to the Jordan section of Nike, and therefore it deserves its own ad group in a separate campaign. We have one campaign, which is the top performer, which is just core of the business, and then we have a second campaign that really covers that extra coverage. So if your brand has specific terms that are specific to you, or if you sell a specific kind of product or a specific technology within your product, this is probably where it's best to include that little separation that allows you to just bid a little bit differently and treat them slightly different. In this case, we are doing exactly that. Our very first core campaign is built on a target impression share. The key of this core campaign is that we just want to show up 99.9% of the time. Anytime someone searches for the brand name, in this case, Nike, we want to show up first every single time. So how we measure that is we actually scroll over, and in our column set, we could add the column called impression share. So you go down to your columns, you click competitive metrics, and you can click search impression share and search absolute top impression share. You go ahead, save and apply, and then you'll see on the right side here, it's instantly going to come up. And in this case, we're doing exactly what we want to do. We're showing up 97% of the time in the searches, and 95% of the time we're showing up at the absolute top, the very first position. This campaign is doing exactly exactly what we want it to do, which is why we set it up like so. The second campaign we have here, which is that secondary, this is also doing a great job of really owning the search at 95% of the time. The goal here, if this was in the 70s and 80s, I would be completely fine with that as long as it's returning at a target CPA that we set. We have set a $50 target CPA, and fortunately for us, it's actually converting well under at a $21 cost per acquisition. Moving forward to our 2 Performance Max campaigns. So this brand that I'm specifically referring to has 2 sets of products. They have a core set of products that are high average order value. So basically the first campaign that we have here represents about 80% of the total business for this account. The second campaign we have here only represents about 15 to 20% of the total business for the account. What we do is we separate these out because we need to dedicate more budget to the better converting, more important product set that we have. We can set the budgets different, we can set the targets different, and we could really just force more velocity on the products that we know are most likely to sell. The beauty of separating this out is we're not actually cannibalizing each other. Let's say there's 2 product sets, product set 1 and product set 2. We are not saying, hey, product set 2, don't spend any money and spend all the money on product set 1. We're actually dedicating individual budget to each product set at specific targets. We know that product set 1 at a 275% ROAS or 2.75 is very, very efficient for us. And it's actually hitting a 3. Product set 2, on the other hand, we actually have a higher goal for because we have slightly worse margins for these products. And therefore we need to set a higher target ROAS. So in this case, we are driving a 3.1 ROAS or conversion value divided by cost of 3.17. We really want this to be closer to like 3.2 to 3.5 to be really, really efficient here, where the other one really only needs to be 2.75 and it's well over. When we actually go into the product sets, what we like to do is have one single core asset group. This is the setup that was used prior to us taking over the account, where things were very, very broken. We had 4 different asset groups in Performance Max, all talking to different things. And all this really did for the account is just break up all the learnings. I'm sure there was a more efficient spot in maybe one of these asset groups, but the big problem is when you separate all your data, Google's going to learn much slower. They're going to have a much harder time understanding who your customer is. And in your case, especially if you're just starting out, I highly recommend grouping together what you can and don't worry about over segmenting. Here's a scenario where I actually would segment out. If we were running a 7-day sale for this brand in particular, and it was a big enough sale where I think it deserved its own creative, its own asset group, I would then duplicate my existing core asset group and just include the sale copy, include the sale assets, and let it run at the same time as my existing asset group. What I would not do is create a new campaign for that promotion. I would not try to break out dozens of different ad groups for different products that were on sale because honestly, it's just going to hurt the algorithm in the long term. The next campaign that we have here is our secondary campaign. And just like I mentioned before, we only have 2 asset groups in here because they're actually serving 2 sets of different products. We try to keep it all together when we can. We actually have to split things up a little bit, but still doing the job that we needed to in terms of asset groups. Now that we've taken a look at the setup of the asset groups, what is actually going down within these asset groups? So an asset group is basically broken down into assets and signals. So we're going to start with assets, and I'm just going to break down literally exactly what we're doing so you can copy and paste this for yourself. First off, your final URL. Set this to the URL of the specific product set that you are targeting. So this could either be a collection page, it could be a landing page that's most effective based on your conversion rate analysis. And then second, for headlines, include at least 10. Google just upgraded from 10 to 15 just a few months ago. I'd recommend at least 10. In this case, we're using 12. Make sure to include at least 2 to 3 options of your brand name. You now have the ability to show a single headline in search when it is likely to yield more results. In the SERP in Google, you now see as many headlines as Google deems to be most effective. In the past, if you had 15 headlines that you gave Google, it would show up 2 or 3. What is happening? What has changed? In this case of Chewy.com, we see 2 different headlines. Chewy.com official site. If Google thought that it was more effective to just show Chewy.com official site without get a free $30 e-gift card, then it would. And that is a major difference for you because as you're setting up these headlines, you don't have to worry about saying the same thing a few extra times. It's okay to duplicate your words here and there. For headlines, we also have long headlines, which are just going to be showing in a couple different places. I recommend doing all 5. In this case, we did 3. Descriptions, 2 is totally fine. You can do 5 if you want. And then for images, 99% of the time, your images that are going to show are going to be your feed images. So you don't have to worry too much about these images here. In this case, just show your most effective images and don't overthink it. This is not going to be the difference between a high converting Performance Max campaign and a low converting Performance Max campaign. If anything, include the most evergreen assets that you have here, the assets that you think will last the longest. Drop your logo, drop your business name. In some cases, we like to include a video. In some cases, we don't. If you have a very effective effective under 30-second video included here. You're going to need to upload it to YouTube, and it will likely be the most effective video you have compared to the automatically generated videos that are created. For your call to action, you can keep this automated. And then as we go down to more asset types, I highly recommend you set up your promotions and your callouts and site links. After that, everything else could remain as is, completely normal. So the next part of a performance max campaign is the signals. The signals is literally you giving Google a signal, valuable information about who you want to reach, so you could help guide Google before the algorithm can take place. The better you are here, the more effective your Google ads are going to run in the short term. In the long term, they're probably all going to catch up because this stuff is going to be all on the back end, but in the short term, it's going to guide Google in the right direction. First piece here, we have a beta of search themes. This just started in 2024, and I highly recommend using all 25. Take your most 25 keywords that describe your brand. Let's just make sure we populate all 25, very specific to your brand. What I want to make clear here is you should not go outside the scope of your brand. If you're selling shoes, don't start saying fashion. Say shoes. Say what kind of shoes they are. Be very specific. Say white shoes, black shoes, green shoes, red shoes, basketball shoes. The bottom piece, and this is probably the most important part about a performance max campaign, is the audience signal. So you can create saved audience signals, and I highly recommend you use similar signals for most of your brands and most of your product sets. In this case, what we're going to do for our signals is we definitely want to include all of the best practices. We are actually only including 2 of the 3 best practices here because we have some limitations on custom segments specific to this account because of what this brand sells. But as long as you don't have limitations, do all 3 of 3 best practices. How we're going to do that is, first off, include your all visitors and your all converters from Google Ads. In addition, include your Klaviyo customer list and really any customer information that you can put in this cohort. Second, we also want to include what we think is the most effective purchase intent for the customers. In this case, we're using our website visitors, and we are also using custom interests that we've created. For these custom interests, we've actually gone through and created a similar sites section. So a bunch of different websites that convert similar to ours, that sell similar products, we've pushed there. And then for purchase intent, we've used individual keywords in a purchase intent custom interest that we've included in here as well. For demographics, I usually recommend keeping this all checked and not worrying about it. But in some cases, if you're selling a very specific product, you can change these. However, it will probably just limit your audience. Moving back to the main dashboard here, let's just do a quick review of how we have set things up. This setup itself, the 1 to 2 search campaigns and a few performance max campaigns based on product segments has been the best that we have seen. What I recommend in terms of budgets, you should basically set your budgets where you're most comfortable. Let's say that's $100, $200 a day. And then you should set your target ROAS or your target cost per acquisition a little bit under where you actually need to fall. In this case, let's say you're spending $200 a day at a target ROAS of 200%. So you should be spending $200 to make $400 every single day. What you can do over time is you have 2 levers to pull. You could either raise the 200 or you could raise your target ROAS. If you raise the 200, you're going to acquire customers faster. You're going to spend more money. You're going to continue to acquire customers at that 200% ROAS. On the flip side, you can increase that ROAS, say to 250%. You'll just make more revenue at the same spend level. Normally, we want to increase both. Just do them separately, one at a time. The final piece to this puzzle is how do we actually analyze these campaigns? Every single day for every client that we manage, we go into first the ad account and we understand what happened yesterday. What were the key metrics? How much did we spend? So yesterday in this account, we spent $659 in total, $638 in our active campaigns. We only drove 7 conversions. So this was a pretty rough day at a 2.32 ROAS. Next thing I like to do is just understand what's the last 7 days and how are we trending. So last 7 days, we spent 4,390 conversions at nearly $22,000 in conversion value. Google pulls back conversions. So it's really, really important not to overanalyze yesterday's data and especially today's data. Really look back at 7 to 14 days when you really want to understand what's happening. First thing I'm looking at is the last 7 days. And I really just want to understand, are there any red flags? Those red flags would come in the case of CPCs, click-through rates, and search impression share. And then of course, this is going to come in play of conversion rates, conversion value, conversions themselves, and cost. So I'd like to look 7 over 7 and just do a quick comparison window here. Our cost per clicks are exactly flat. They're up 0.9%. I don't care about that. That is totally fine. Our impressions, however, are up 42% and our cost is only up 33%. The great part here, and what I love to see just 7 days compared to the last 7 days, is so we've spent 33% more and we have actually made 55% more. This is the exact formula that we want. We want to spend more money and make even more than that. So what that means for us is that our return on ad spend actually improved by 15.8%. This is the exact trend that we want. What I would look at, let's just say this was the opposite. Let's say that for some reason your cost per clicks jumped up 20%. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the keyword reports. Let's pretend that this went up 20% week over week or even 50% week over week. So you were previously getting $1 to $2 cost per clicks. Now you're getting $4 cost per clicks, which is causing your entire advertising strategy to nearly double in price and be half as efficient as it was. So here's what we're going to do. It's the most standard process in all of Google. So you go into your ad groups of your search campaign, and you could do this in your Performance Max campaign in your Insights tab. So you go into this section here and you go down to search terms, and you're just going to quickly scroll through what search terms are here. This is a perfect setup. We only have 8 single search terms here because it's a very tightly managed account and all is good here. But there is some cases where we'll look at this on a daily basis and we'll see 400 search terms. And maybe what happened is we have a keyword that's going haywire. We have a keyword that's spending more than it should and it's converting on the wrong keywords and it's really just spending our money in the wrong places. So all we would do if that was the case, let's just pretend this one was that bad keyword. We'd simply click the checkbox. I would add it as a negative. And in addition, I would look at what keyword is triggering the search term. So if we want to put this as a negative search term, and I'd look at what keyword is triggering it. And then I would go to the search keywords itself, and I would potentially pause or remove that keyword that was triggering the bad search terms. And you could do this exact same process in Performance Max. You go to Insights, and the tricky thing here is you can only look at 7 days or 28 days. So I prefer to look at last 28 days, and you could see your consumer spotlight report, which shows you your top performing campaigns. What I prefer to do is open up the detailed report, which is going to show you the search terms, and you could really just separate these down by clicks so you could get a good understanding of where you're spending your money. All of these search terms are literally exactly what we want to be searching on for this account because we manage this very tightly. However, in the case that, let's say the second search category here was camera equipment, we'd be really worried that there's a keyword or something in our Performance Max campaign that's causing us to show up on a completely irrelevant term for us. And we need to just make sure that we are showing up on the most relevant search categories literally at all times. The final piece of this entire thing here is how do you scale? This actually all comes back to the goals that you set. Set your goals with intention and with math. Don't set your goals because you heard someone else is doing some other thing. Don't set your goals personally because this account that we're looking at converts at a 5 ROAS. That might not be your business. We have brands that we manage that are super happy with a 2 ROAS, and we have other brands that need to be at a 10. Let's say first you are hitting your goal. Just up the budget first. Do not take it to the next level of trying to tweak too many things. So simply up your budget in increments of 10 to 20%. If you're not hitting your goal, let's say you're spending. You have this budget set for $1,500 a day, but you're not hitting your ROAS target of 275. Lower your budget first, and then if that doesn't solve your problem, up your ROAS target. So if you want to spend your complete budget, just up your ROAS target by increments of about 10 to 15% at most. More than that might reset some things, so just be careful when you're doing that. If you're in a dire scenario, lower both budget and raise your ROAS at the same time. Otherwise, do them separately, one at a time, like that seesaw we mentioned. If you're a brand that does under $1 million in revenue, implement this system and let me know how it goes. On the flip side, if you're a brand over $1 million, even up to $10 million in revenue per year, and what I just said feels like a completely foreign language to you, or someone else is managing your ads and you know they're not using a system that's as good as this, reach out to us at themoonlighters.co and we will help you get your ads to the next level. Thank you so much, everyone. Talk soon.